Hello everyone, and welcome to week 3 of English 200. This week, we're going to be talking about creative nonfiction. This is a new genre, and we're going to be spending some time really getting to know what creative nonfiction is. Then we're going to talk a little bit about using miniature to encourage attention in creative nonfiction. I'm going to give you 3 examples of short essays that are examples of creative nonfiction. Then you're going to write some. Your first assignment will be part of your discussion forum, so we're going to practice writing together. It's a free writing exercise. Then you're going to do an assignment in your writing journal, an exercise, again, just to really get your mind loosened, and we're working on learning how to write memoir. You're going to do an exercise called Flood of Memory. Then you will do another exercise called that's just called memoir, and then your formal assignment for the week will be to revise your memoir exercise into an essay. The reading for this week is posted under this week's content, so please download that. It's a PDF. If you have any trouble, please let me know, but it should be fine. It's approximately, I think, 40 pages, but it reads fast. All right, so let's talk a little bit about creative nonfiction. This is a different genre than poetry. It's really based on, the idea of an essay is based on the idea to attempt. It's the idea of exploration, right? It's not the typical essays that you wrote in high school or college, where you often were prescripted as to how you needed to structure your essay, probably with an introduction that included a thesis, and then at least 3 supporting points supported with evidence, and then revisiting how you proved your thesis and your conclusion. Throw that out the window for this, not for your life, please, because I also teach that class. Throw that out the window for this week, okay, as we learn creative nonfiction. Don't be afraid to do things differently than you've done them before. Now, creative nonfiction is a fairly new genre. That doesn't mean that people weren't writing creative nonfiction hundreds of years ago. Francis Bacon was writing them in the 1600s. Montaigne wrote them many hundreds of years ago. But it's become much more popular in the last couple decades, since really the 70s. Most creative nonfiction essays are written in a conversational tone. They usually they include a reflection. And that's really the mode that a creative nonfiction essay has. It's a mode of thinking and feeling. They usually involve research. You really want to explore topics you truly want to explore. So one thing about the word non-fiction is it's not fiction. So if you are going to be writing about something, and we'll have examples of this in what we're reading this week, you want to make sure that you are stating the truth to the best of your knowledge. Which reminds me of the last fact here, that it's a creative nonfiction essay is based on truth. It really insists on veracity. The idea that you are trying to portray the truth. Creative nonfiction essays are personal. You need to have a personal presence. It's okay to use the word I in a creative nonfiction essay. In fact, it's very encouraged. It needs to reflect on your personal experience. They are filled with self-discovery and exploration. And creative nonfiction uses flexibility of form and takes a literary approach. What that means is everything you just learned in the last 2 weeks about poetry, you're going to use in this week when you write a creative nonfiction essay, except for line breaks. And the idea of boundaries between genres, so between poetry and creative nonfiction, they're blurry, and that's the idea. It's okay to play with those. I wanted to start with a quote, tell you a little more about creative nonfiction, but I wanted to start with a quote from a wonderful creative nonfiction writer named Dinty Moore. The personal essayist takes a topic and holds it up to the bright light, turning it this way and that, upside and down, studying every perspective, fault and reflection, in an artful attempt to perceive something fresh and significant. So creative nonfiction, just as a general definition, is an essay enlivened with literary craft, imagery, voice, character, setting, and scene. It tells a story, or describes a journey and a change. You can't just describe an event that took place in your life without showing us the journey that's happened since then or that happened then. We need, as a reader, to feel why you're telling this story. So memoir, which is what we're going to be working on this week, is retrieved from the writer's memory. So the writer is the protagonist. That means you will be the star of your essay. The emphasis is on story, where the purpose emerges through the events and characters. You tell the story, slowly revealing the purpose. And you'll see that in the essay, the memoir essay that we're going to be reading called Life Rower. Personal essay is about something that has happened in the writer's life that gives rise to personal reflection or intellectual exploration. This is like the second essay we're going to read by Brian Dole. There should always in your essays be an apparent subject. So for example, maybe you're writing an essay about the Gravenstein apple. You can tell us, it's clear to us that it's all about, the history of the apple, and that's your subject. It's very clear what your subject is. But unless there's some underlying purpose that you are telling us about this apple, it's not a successful essay. So there's always the surface story, and then underneath there's this current, this deep, deep current that's pulling the emotions of the reader along. Just like in a really good poem, it's the same kind of dual perception. This is a quote from Leah Purpura. She's an amazing creative nonfiction writer. We'll be looking at her hopefully next week. Next week we're just going to be reading examples and writing from them. But she says miniature encourages attention. And the idea is that if you just look at a forest, you just see forest, right? You just see it's one entity. Whereas if you look very closely at a forest, you can see the bark on the tree and how different each bark is. You can see the leaves in the tree, and then you can look very, very close up and see what each vein looks like on that leaf. You can see the branch systems and how they differ from one tree to the other, and how the light has changed it, or the water source. And you can use this deep, deep looking to help you tell a story about something else. Maybe this will help you understand how people live in a city close together. You can use it as a metaphor to help you understand another thing in life. And by looking at something very closely, whatever it is, remember, if you're very, very specific, you can be much more powerful in your writing. So by looking at this very, very closely, you'll be able to make it a universal experience for your reader. So let's look first at the essay by Rebecca McClanahan. It's called Life Rower. It's probably a good idea to read through it before. If you want to pause the essay and read through it and then come back, that's fine. If not, I will not know, and you will not get in trouble. It's up to you how you want to do it. The first thing I want you to think about after reading this essay is I want you to think, what is the essay about? Then think about the structure, because it's not just a straight chronological narrative. It's not just her sitting on the rowing machine. And this is a screenshot. The graphic here, the first one is Rebecca, a picture of Rebecca, and then below it is a picture of the screen. Clearly this was written a while ago, because I'm sure if you went on a rowing machine nowadays, a fancy life rower, you would see all kinds of graphics. You'd actually see the water moving or something. But it's structured where you quickly move from one topic to the next without a lot of transitions. What personal experience does the author sort through in this piece? she slowly builds more personal information until she gets to the idea that she had an abortion. And she seems to be the way she's layering everything. She's trying to create an emotion in the reader as they row with her from one thing to the next. And really that comes down to how she uses the life rower. She's using this device, this one machine, this experience in a gym, including the yoga class, right? To help her identify and understand her own life. And you can definitely do this in an essay. Another wonderful example of using something, a larger metaphor, like the life rower, to tell a story about finding yourself is a book by Cheryl Strayed, also creative nonfiction, called Wild. You may have heard of it. It was a bestseller. We're going to be reading an excerpt from it next week. But it's something that, if you haven't read the book, you should read it. It's great. But the idea is that you use a metaphor. She uses the hiking the Pacific Crest Trail as a way to find, to understand more about herself. All right, the second example is called Joyous Voladoras, and this is by Brian Dole. You'll see here there's a picture of Brian, but also a hummingbird. And I really want you to pay attention in this essay to how Doyle uses specificity. You'll notice I can't say that word. I'm so sorry. How does he use this in his essay? He is so specific about what he tells us about in this very short essay. Then he uses facts about different animals' hearts to tell us, how does he use those facts to tell us more about the human condition? And it's clear that he's done a lot of research in order to know these facts. How does he use that research? How do you see him as an authority as you're reading through it? And how does his essay make you feel? At the end of the essay, what do you feel? And what do you think it is that he's done that makes you feel this way? Okay, the last example is funny. It's David Sedaris, and he's written an essay called Jesus Shaves. The picture here is obviously an Easter bunny and David Sedaris. David Sedaris uses humor really well in his writing, so I want you to think about how he uses humor in his writing. This is something we don't often think about in creative writing. We don't know we can be funny. You're completely allowed to be funny. What is this essay about? Where is he? What's going on in the essay? And how does he use his own experiences in this essay to make the essay move forward? So now let's talk a little bit about form in creative writing. Form is such an important part. It's not about proving a thesis, like I mentioned, but it's about making connections amongst sometimes very disparate, different things. Many times one must destroy what happened in order to get to the essence of that experience. So you must have to look at it really, really closely. You may have a memory that you feel is intact, but when you start really exploring it, looking at it under the microscope, you'll see it differently, and you have to be willing to do that. You always want to choose a powerful moment. Every essay that you're going to read has something memorable in it, something that incites this journey, this personal reflection. There's two different ways I want you to think about structuring your essay this week. The first is braiding and also jump cuts. So the idea is taking bringing together two or more disparate topics and spacing between sections rather than using transitions. So that's how she does it in Life Rower. She'll move from the gym to a personal reflection without transitioning from one to the next. So what she's doing is really essentially braiding together two different stories, two different narratives. And it's a really effective way to tell a story in creative nonfiction. Another is chronologically, right? But filled with really specific details. So you're true to the way things happened, but you are very, very detailed. You look very, very closely. And there's an example of that in Jesus Shaves in David Sedaris' essay. Here's some tips. This is very important. When you are writing, you must think of your audience. No navel gazing. That means don't just write for yourself. I mean, it really goes back to the audience. Remember that the purpose is to create a piece of art. It's not to just let out this feeling. One of the number one reasons why people have trouble with creative nonfiction is because they write diary entries rather than creative nonfiction essays. It's easy to do. These are things, this is your life you're writing about, right? Of course you're connected to it. But you need to think about what the reader's going to feel. That's why you think about structuring, right? So when you choose your topic, make sure that you can distance yourself enough so that you can really think about it artfully. When you start, you want to give the reader signposts so they know where they are, right? Don't say, I'm going to be writing an essay about my dog, Ralph. Okay, that's probably not a good way to start, right? But you could start with an image of Ralph sitting by the fire, right? Or Ralph running through the snow, or something that makes us realize that this is going to be about your relationship with your dog, right? If you're going to be writing about something set somewhere far away, make sure you set up where that is, right? Where are we? Like if you're going to be, telling us about something that happened to you in Sendai, Japan, by all means in that first paragraph, let us know that we're in Sendai, Japan. You don't have to say, I am in Sendai, Japan. You can say, the the trolley car was packed um, with children going to parochial school. As I made my way on my first day to the high school I was attending in Sendai, Japan, right? Set it up so that it's a sentence doing work, but it also locates where we are. It locates the writer's relationship with what he or she is writing about. You want to be as specific as possible and use small gestures rather than large ones. So for example, I know, we all know, right? If you're mad, you're going to jump up and down and scream, or, we know what road rage looks like, right? But we don't know exactly how your mother registered disappointment. Everyone knows what their mom looks like when they're disappointed, right? Was it a crinkle in her brow, or did she slump her shoulders, or she tighten her face muscles, right? Or maybe when your sister was lying, right? What did she do that was her tell, right? How did you know? Or your best friend. How do you know when your best friend is lying to you, right? So think about very, very specifically about what you know about the people you're writing about that's special. That's not what everyone else is like. Very, very importantly, too, when you're writing memoir, don't tell us what happened. Show us. Just like in poetry. Don't use abstract words if you don't have to. Give us what that feeling is. Don't say I was sad. Give us an image that reveals that. It's important to do your research. Now you're writing about yourself, but if you're writing, say for example, you choose a prompt where you're telling us you've forgotten what summer camp was like. You always used to go to the summer camp, and for some reason you've kind of lost what it was like. By all means, research your summer camp. Think about what it's like now. Learn more. Or you've forgotten what it's like to dive into a cold lake. Go dive into a cold lake. See what it feels like. Try to remember, right? Doing research in creative nonfiction is not just going on the internet and Googling things, but that's part of it. It's also physically, understanding something or talking to your family and trying to remember. Maybe your sister went to the same camp. Ask her, right? In your essay, don't be a hero or a victim. Okay, if you're writing an essay that just toots your own horn, people aren't going to want to read it, right? Choose a story that, the best creative nonfiction is where people explore themselves and come out on the other side deeper and more, knowledgeable than they were when they began. Insight isn't on the surface. It's deep and underneath. So you're going to be telling a story, and you want to slowly trawl out from the bottom depths of that story the insight that you want to walk away with, and you want the reader to walk away with. All right. So let's get started, guys. We're going to dip our toes into creative nonfiction, and we're going to do it together, okay? I'd like you to do a free writing exercise, 10 to 15 minutes. That's it, okay? So what I want you to do is to just open up the discussion post, say, here goes, right? And write an answer to these questions. Free write about an experience in your life that was meaningful, a childhood memory, a significant day on the job that you held briefly, your child's 7th birthday. Try to clearly describe the scene using sensory detail. Remember, tell us what it looked like, tell us what it felt like, tell us what it smelled like, okay? What was the weather like that day? Who are you in this moment? Who are you after, okay? Now tell us why this day is important. What is your purpose? What did you learn from this memory or experience? What do you want to convey to the reader? Read your peers' posts and provide encouragement, okay? So you're going to write yours. Your initial post is due by July 4th at 11:59 p.m., okay? You're going to write your post. Then you're going to read your peers' post and provide encouragement. Compare stories. Celebrate the risks they took. No negativity in the discussion forum, all right? This is all fresh writing, and you have to be really brave to post your fresh writing, okay? And it's only a warm-up. So nobody's going to write anything that's perfect, and that's okay. That's the whole idea. We're here to learn creative writing. So we want to encourage each other to write more, okay? Your responses to your peers are due by July 7th at 11:59 p.m. All right, then you get to move to your writing exercise, number 6. It's called Flood of Memory. Toni Morrison likens memory to the way the Mississippi River, years after being straightened and pushed into levees by Army Corps of Engineers, still strains at times to flood its banks and revisit the original meandering route. All water has a perfect memory and is forever trying to get back to where it was, Morrison tells us. Writers are like that, remembering where we were, what valley we ran through, what the banks were like, the light that was there, and the route back to our original place. Many times a flood of memory is derived from the memory of a single thing. A blue pitcher your aunt always kept in her window that caught the morning sunlight, or what your bedroom ceiling looked like as a child, or the way it felt to play in the creek as a child. Once you remember that object or feeling, let it lead you to another and another through free writing. Write for 15 minutes continuously. So before you begin this, make sure you've got 15 minutes uninterrupted, okay? If you have to lock yourself in the bathroom, do it, just so you can write for 15 minutes by yourself. No cell phones available, no texting. Clearly describe the object or place or feeling. Use sensory detail, metaphor, and simile. Don't be afraid to take risks. Let that object connect you with another object or idea or story. After you've written your free write, spend 5 minutes thinking about what you've written. Why are these things important? What could be your purpose in writing about these things? All right, that's your first writing exercise. The second one, which is number 7 for the whole class, is your shot at writing memoir. This is your warm-up for writing your essay for this week. Consider one of the following prompts. You're going to just choose one. You've got 4 options here, okay? First one, write a creative nonfiction essay of at least 500 words where you answer one or more of the following questions. What are you afraid of? What as a child did you totally misunderstand but now as an adult see differently? What part of your body do you obsess over as too small, too large, oddly proportioned, or totally dull? If you could change your name, what would you change it to? What would this change represent actually or symbolically? Why do names matter? Okay, your second choice. Write a creative nonfiction essay of at least 500 words where you choose a family memory that everyone seems to remember differently. Now explore. Tell us your version. Tell us how your mother remembers it or that she refuses to remember it at all. Don't try to win the argument. Instead, explore the gap between the two stories, the two memories. Third choice, what have you forgotten? This may seem odd, but often what we've forgotten tells a story about ourselves. Maybe you used to go to summer camp and you've forgotten the details, what the cabin smelled like, what it felt like to dive into the cold lake and go under. What might be the truth about the missing gap? What can you learn by doing research and asking others? What will you never know? And finally, you can go back to your first writing prompt. Use your free write from your last writing exercise as a jumping off point, not the discussion form, the one you did in your journal. Choose one of the objects, places, or feelings you discovered in your free write and write a creative nonfiction essay of at least 500 words about it. Okay? So, from those, you're going to be writing your first creative nonfiction essay. Okay? I want you to revise your memoir essay so that it is the best that you can make it. You will be graded on how hard you work on changing your essay from what you posted in your writing exercise and what you post as part of your assignment. I want to see a huge change, all right? Spelling and grammar count, so pay attention to editing. All creative nonfiction essays must be at least 500 words and have a title. I'm looking forward to reading your work, you guys. I love it when we move to a new genre. You guys are going to do great. All right. This is our first week of creative nonfiction. We're week 3, halfway at the end of this week, you guys. Can you believe it? Then next week, we're going to continue with creative nonfiction. Then we'll go on to fiction for 2 weeks, then our final portfolio. All right, guys, that's it. I look forward to seeing you guys online. As always, just reach out to me via email if you have any questions, or we can set up a conference via phone or Skype, or we can meet on campus. All right? Have a great week.